I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we are thrilled to introduce you to an amazing author. His name is Antonio Francesca, and he has written a riveting book called Rings of Honor. This novel takes readers on a historical journey following a group of neighborhood boys from 1933 to 1938 as they courageously confront and thwart Hitler's Nazis from infiltrating the American way of life, setting the stage for America's crucial role in WW2. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The links are below the interview. Antonio, thanks so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Tell us what inspired you to explore this time frame of pre-World War II America.
Yeah, I'll jump back almost 35 years ago. My wife, unfortunately, she passed in 2014. But when we were dating, she had mentioned to me, she said, I have to pay a Shiva visit. I'll try to make this quick. And I said, what is that? I'm raised Italian Catholic. I never even heard that word before. And she said, it's a funeral. It's the way the Jewish people look at a funeral as compared to Catholic people go to a funeral parlor. Right. Yep. But in the Jewish faith, they bury them after 24 hours. And then consequently, everyone goes to the house. They bring food and they comfort the bereaved for 3 or 4 days. I said, sounds cool. Okay. I went to the house and I said, I'm going to find a place to sit. There was a gentleman there, elderly guy, dandruff on his jacket, looked like he needed a shave. I sat down next to him. Within minutes, he looked at me and he said, who are you? I said, my name is Antonio. What are you doing here? I said, the girl that I'm seeing is paying her respects. Who is that? I mentioned the name. He said, oh, you're the one. Because in those days, the Catholics and the Jew, it wasn't a normal thing to get involved with a Jewish girl. Yep. Consequently, after speaking to him, he was so informative. He was in the background. This man by himself, I've written 9 novels. This man was inspirational in 5 of them. He was a phenomenal individual. And during the course of the conversation, and by the way, I came back 5 nights in a row. They said, what a wonderful kid paying his respects, but I wanted to talk to this guy. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah.
His name is Jack Friedlander, 100 years ahead of his time. I could go on and on about him. I did a documentary about him too. But so basically, as he was talking, he said, yeah, I was involved when I was a kid with the Minutemen and all. I said, well, what's that? And there goes the story. He said, how it occurred. A lot of Jewish people, especially having dinner at night, they would be talking about different things that Gentiles never talked about. For instance, 1932, 33, and 34, the beginnings of the onslaught of the Nazi ideology was permeating every Jewish business. So the ones that had money, the ones that had the ability to get out, would start to write to their brethren in the United States, get me out. Please get me out. The walls are caving in. You watch a film so phenomenally adaptive is the Schindler's List. You watch that and it brings chills up my spine because everything that Jack talked about I saw in that movie. So consequently, how this thing begins, a young boy going to yeshiva, which is the Jewish school, he's going there and he happens to pass by a building, which is still there, which is on 10th Street and Springfield Avenue, called Schwab Noble Hall. And he looks inside and there's about 100 men in there. And Hitler's picture's on the wall and they got their arm up. And there's Sig Heil, Sig Heil. So anyway, in the Jewish household, he viewed the swastika, which is on the cover of the book, the swastika. He views that and he sees it on the wall. So when he goes home, he tells his grandfather. The grandfather says, no. You've been listening to your aunt and your uncle talk at the dinner table? He said, no, Grandpa, I saw it. He takes the old man there. I'll cut to the chase. The old man almost has a heart attack. And he makes these words, oh my God, they're here. And that riveted through his body. So now immediately he goes to the mayor of Newark, who was Jewish. His name was Meyer Ellenstein. He goes there. Ellenstein throws him out. He says, get this guy out of here. This guy's a loony. He's crazy. The assistant chief of police was Jewish, Captain Steinberg. They go to the 5th precinct. He throws them out. He doesn't know where to go. Now, I don't know if your viewers have ever heard this name I'm about to give you, but this man had $100 million in his bank account in 1938. His name was Abner Zwilman. You could look him up.
Yeah.
He was his partners with Lucky Luciano and all those bootleggers in the New York City. He was the most powerful gangster in New Jersey. Had about 100 guys working for him. The old man goes to him and he says, I'm looking to get convicted on a murder charge. I don't have time to hear this stuff. He said, but you're a Jew. It should bother you. The mayor's not interested. The police are not interested. He said, oh, my God, I can't. So he grabs his right-hand man, and his name was Nathaniel Abramowitz, nicknamed Nate Arno, who's an ex-fighter. And he says, Nate, he gives him $1,500. Now, $1,500 in 1933 is like maybe 3 million, 5 million today.
Right.
He says, get this old Jew out of my hair. And he's Jewish. He said, he's giving me guilt palpitations. Get him away from me. So he does. But as he's walking the old man away, the old man begins to cry. And he said, where am I? He said, your name is Nate Nathaniel. You speak Yiddish? He said, yeah. And he begins to talk in their native tongue. And he says, I have no place to go. And he said, well, what are you carrying this cross for? I mean, what for? He said, because these people are here. They're killing our cousins and they're killing people left and right over a stupid idea that this nut Hitler's got. He says, well, Nate Arno buys in. Now begins the nurturing now. He goes out and he finds the roughest, toughest young Jewish men. Simultaneously at the same time, the great Italian gangster, Charles Lucania, nicknamed Lucky Luciano, who hated Mussolini with a passion, who hated this whole ideology. He was a gangster. He turns around, calls a cousin of his, who's in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and he says, I want you to find the roughest, toughest Italian boys you can find. And I want you to get in touch with this Nate Arno. He says, I can't stand those guys, the Jewish guys in the neighborhood. He said, I don't care. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. Put these guys, at least 30 or 40 together, get them up there and bust these rings up. And basically that's the impetus.
Amazing.
And so consequently now, they had 1 or 2 guys that infiltrated the Nazi group. They in turn gave them information. And consequently, every time that the Nazis met in famous places, let me back up a little bit. When Hitler was in Germany, Hitler went and got an educated, college-educated, American college-educated guy who spoke both German, Italian, and English. And his name was Francis Kuhn. And he gave him money. And he said, you go to the United States, find the largest communities that have German, in quote, population. In other words, 70, 80%. Anything less than that, no. He found 3 cities. Unbelievable. 2 of them were in New Jersey, not 10 minutes from where I'm sitting. Irvington, New Jersey, and Union, this town here that I'm in. And you can tell by all the street signs. And the other town was Kenosha, Wisconsin. And he said, I want you to open up bunds, meeting halls. Get the disenfranchised youth. We'll spend money. Don't worry about it. If he said, we're going to be in a war with these people. He said, I can fight Europe and I can fight Moscow, but I can't fight the 3 prongs, the United States and M&M. He said, but if you do your job and you infiltrate these sections, we'll destroy their waterworks, we'll destroy their electrical system, we'll infiltrate them and destroy them. So by the time we get ready to do the onslaught, when I start doing what I want to do, I'm going to cross Europe, I'm going to destroy all of Europe. He said, they won't be ready to fight. They'll have their own problems. That was the ideology. So the meeting halls are there. Here comes the young toughs in the street. And for 4.5 years, they cause mayhem. And here's the final, the real life story. The head, this guy Fritz Kuhn, goes to the governor of New York, which was Dewey. Mm-hmm. By the way, Dewey made his bones by locking up Luciano for 50 to 90 years. Luciano got out in 6 year. I mean, Dewey was an anti-Semite anyway. Mm-hmm. They go see Dewey and they tell him, we're going to have our national sales meet, our national get-together for the United German cause. And Dewey says, so what do you want from me? He said, we want a forum. So they gave them Madison Square Garden. They told Fiorello LaGuardia, who was the mayor, you put uniformed police around there because this German group, this sports group, they've been harassed. So in September of 1938, 40,000 Nazis showed up in Madison Square Garden with the swastikas on their arms. The next morning, when Roosevelt, who was dying of polio, mm-hmm. he reads in the New York Times what happened. He calls Dewey and he said, are you insane? We're going to be in a war with these people and what have you. But the crux of what I'm trying to do is show you Hitler's first defeat was in America. In 1934, the largest riot in the United States history occurred right here. 3,000 people arrested in one night. The militia came out, the state police came out, the National Guard came out with the Nazis and these boys. And these boys were heroes, really heroes. And so in 1938, they had nobody to fight anymore. They went back to their milk routes or wherever they were working. And that's basically at the crux of the story.
Amazing. It's amazing how you brought this unknown chapter of history to life for many, many Americans. I'd never heard of this stuff before. I did know there were a lot of tough kids on the street back in the day, that's for sure. The whole no bullying stuff was not to be invented yet. Neighborhood kids in New York City and Newark, and they were tough. I mean, grew up in New Rochelle, New York, and the kids in the neighborhood got into quite a few brawls. And that was decades later. The 30s, the 40s, different story. But you've written a great book. It is called Rings of Honor. It is taking readers on a historical journey following a group of young neighborhood boys from 1933 to 1988 as they courageously confront and thwart Hitler's Nazis from infiltrating the American way of life. Antonio, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, sir. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.
Thanks, Logan.